Eton, I can hear you very faintly.
We'll do our best.
Perfect. That takes it right back. That's just perfect.
Okay, call to order July 19th, 2022, meeting of the North Andover Planning Board. All right, so this meeting is being held in person. So for everyone's edification, when we posted the meeting last week, there had not been any updates to the regulations regarding the open meeting law. And so the allowance of the hybrid version or the remote versions lapsed as of Friday, July 15th. Since then, either over the weekend or yesterday, the Lieutenant Governor did sign legislation passed by the House and Senate, which extends the ability to do remote and hybrid meetings. So I do plan to allow for hybrid meetings going forward. We just couldn't do it today because it wasn't allowed by law at the time we posted the meeting. But the plan is to still do it as it we'd like as many people to be in person as they can. I think that it adds to our discussions and I think enables better back and forth, and we don't have to worry about technology. But to the extent that people are interested and more available and want to do the hybrid, we will continue to allow that as of our next meeting, as long as it's allowed by law. So that's where we stand with that. We don't have any public hearings today, so we'll move into we'll do the communication first, and then we'll go into the discussion items. So we have...
John, excuse me.
Yeah.
If you could just make a statement that according to open meeting law provisions, Kelly's participating remotely tonight.
Okay, so we do have Kelly Cormier is participating in the meeting today. She's not here in person. She is participating remotely under the standard open meeting law as it was before the pandemic regulations. So that is allowed. We need to do roll call votes for any votes. Please make sure that you're speaking into the microphone so that she can hear. We also need to be able to hear her as well. So Kelly, you can hear us, correct?
Absolutely.
All right,
Yeah.
and we can hear you. Okay.
Take roll call attendance.
Yes, please.
Okay, Kelly Cormier,
Here.
remotely. Alyssa Koenig.
Here.
Sean Kevelin.
Here.
Eitan Goberg.
I am present.
And John Simons.
And Mr. Boynton is not present. Again, we do not have any public hearings, so we won't need any certifications or things like that. Okay, communications, 50 Peter Street, North Andover Ventures, LLC. Jean, tell us about what we received, please.
I am just casting a letter. So there's been, I would classify it as somewhat of a dispute regarding drainage concerns between the redeveloped 419 Andover Street, which is the former Ethan Allen lot that got reconstructed with a Starbucks, Convenient MD, and a Chase Bank, and the owners of 50 Peter Street, which is the abutting parcel of land that houses the Burger King hardware store and strip mall. They've been in discussions, and a result of those discussions, a letter was submitted to yourself, Chair of the Board. They're aware that the bond is still being held on the property. I believe the bond's the amount of $30,000. The request for the bond release has not been made to the board at this time, but there's concerns that drainage is leaving 419 Andover Street at a rate that is causing some flooding across the parking lot in 50 Peter Street.
And it's my understanding there's a disagreement about causation and what's happened in the past, things like that. So what we'll do with this is we'll receive that communication. We'll place it on file with the file for the special permit. We are still holding the bond. So when there is a request for a release, we will certainly look into this and address this. We'll certainly address the issue if there's a bond release request before the board. I would encourage the parties to continue discussions to see if it's something that they can resolve on their own. If they would like our peer reviewer to look at it, to provide us information, if they can come up with a formula for paying for that, we would also be willing to listen to that. Otherwise, when the bond release request comes in, we'd listen to whoever wants to make a statement and then make a decision on the bond release. But there's nothing before us right now that we can act on. So we'll note it, we'll put it in the file, and if things aren't resolved by the time a bond release comes up, then we'll deal with it at that point. Or if the parties wish to deal with the issue on their own in a civil manner, they can do that as well. Any comments, questions? Okay, great. So received and placed on file. Great, thank you, Gene. All right, discussion item 137 Andover Street, trustees of reservation. Presentation of operations report is required by special condition 23 of the approved site plan review special permit. Also request for release of the $10,000 performance bond, which was posted to ensure construction erosion control and measures in performance of any other condition contained within the decision will take place in accordance with the plans and to ensure an as-built plan will be submitted. Kelly, it's my understanding as an abutter, you would recuse yourself from this?
Yeah, I'm recusing myself from this one. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So Kelly is recused. We will have anyone want to make a presentation or a summary, Gene, and then a presentation?
Yep, so if I can provide some background. The site plan approval allowed for the repurposing of an existing 24 by 60-foot shed to become a visitor center, parking for 61 cars and associated landscaping. An operations report, construction record plan, and engineer certification letter are included in your packet. A bond release request was included in the December 2021 Planning Board agenda. The result of that request was the following motion. John Simons made a motion to maintain the bond as is and review the site based upon the one-year report and evidence of plantings and screenings come springtime. Peter Boynton seconded it. Roll call vote was 3-0 unanimous in favor. And so now we're at the point of 1 year from the certificate of occupancy. They provided an operations report that I've displayed on the screen, and it's in your pocket as well. It was required based on special condition 23 of the January 7th, 2019 special permit. 1 year after CO and yearly thereafter for 3 years, the applicant shall furnish the planning board with a report on the operations of the Stevens Coolidge estate, focusing on the effects of changes noted in this site plan. This report shall include, but not be limited to, frequency of overflow parking, lot use, pictures of planting screenings, pictures of new parking lot and overflow parking lot, when in use and when not in use, evidence of the project engineer certification that stormwater management system is functioning as designed, and photometric plan analysis to determine actual lumen intensity versus planned lumen intensity. So, okay.
Hi, good afternoon, Chairman and Board. My name is Jared Bowers. I'm the Property Director at Stevens Coolidge. I'm joined by Jeremy Dick, who's our Stewardship Manager. I was, obviously you've seen a copy of the operations report as part of our order of conditions, so I won't go through all of it line by line, just to give you a summary, if that's okay, of the 4 key areas that are mentioned, which are parking, lighting, sound, and the buffers. So with the parking, it's just to say that our entrance off of Chickering Road, the drive, and the parking lot are all working as designed. The drainage is working as well as we designed. We have not used our overflow parking lot since we started, mainly because the conditions have not been terribly favorable in the past year with a lot of wet, like soil conditions, so we just haven't used it. So we designed all of our events to be smaller in size and do time ticketing so we could avoid that. Lighting, so with our lighting, we hardly ever use the lighting apart from during winter lights. That's really the only time of year where we have our lights turned on. We removed some of the landscape lighting as well, simply because we never used it. We don't have events that we run at night apart from winter lights, which happens in December and the first week of January. So we are asking to waive the photometric analysis if possible. And then with sound management, as I'm sure you all know, we worked with a town official last year using a sound meter to measure the decibel levels during the concerts that we have during the summertime, which were all found to be very reasonable. The loudest it was at the property is actually on Wednesdays when we're doing our mowing during the day.
And the health director is who conducted those metering tests, so the health director for the town.
Sorry, thank you, Jean. And on the buffers front, we've planted in 3 different areas as requested. The sort of end of Wood Lane, sorry, bear with me just a second, against the Andover Street facing side of our parking lot and along the chickering curb with our neighbors that was requested. We put up a couple screening walls as well. So with those four things in mind, we do request for the release of the bond and the photometric analysis be waived. The Conservation Commission also closed this out recently as well, so we're just hoping to close out tonight if possible. Thank you. Is there anything you want to add, Jeremy? No? Good.
So that being said, you received emails today. Additional packet items were added this afternoon and late this evening from abutters. So we do have, Kelly Cormier is one of the ones that submitted them, as well as, I'm going to say it wrong, but Sierra? Penny Sierra, regarding drainage concerns on Old Village Lane.
I will read those. I just want to, okay, I see it, okay. All right, so let's, we'll read those comments, and then we'll go from there. All right, so we have from Penny Sierra. Hi, Jean, this letter was sent to an engineer back in March. I hope this picture helps. Thank you so much. I'll see you tonight. All right. The email forward, it says, "Hi, Steve. As I mentioned to you on the phone, we live in North Andover, 58 Old Village Lane. From our backyard, we abut the Stevens Coolidge estate. During the last few years, they have done, I guess, $1 million worth of groundwork. They added gardens, structures, road, parking lots, etc. Since they have been working, our backyard has become almost flooded. It never dries except maybe in the height of the summer. You really have to see it to believe it. We have live. These photos were taken on a random day, not after rain. Please let me know if you need any additional information. Thank you, Penny Sierra." And then there are photographs attached to that.
Yes. So if you, I'll just scroll through these photos.
And we have, I brought more photographs too, if they all didn't think through.
I have them all.
And our backyard never had water.
Okay. And then one additional comment. This is from Kelly Cormier. "My name is Kelly Cormier. I live at 169 Andover Street. I'm writing again to ask you to please consider not releasing the bond for 137 Andover Street, Stevens Coolidge Place. At the 7/19/22 Planning Board meeting, there are still numerous items outstanding. I'm including my letter on the same from December 12, 2021, as all of the issues remain with the exception of number 4, the do not enter sign has not been recently posted, and number 8 did not mention the tree. Additional or continued points from December letter. The trustees and I have not communicated about any of the points raised at the December 2021 Planning Board meeting. The noise from the amplified music continues to be unacceptable and unreasonable. I've stopped complaining to the trustees about the noise, as every complaint I made to them directly over the course of 5+ years has yielded no noticeable change. The past 2 weekends, Friday and Saturday, the amplified concerts have been so loud we have turned off our own music on our porch or moved inside. The only way to hear music over the amplified music from the trustees was to turn ours up so loud it was impossible to have a conversation, and a battle of the bands was not how we wanted to spend our evening. While I do know I need to be more proactive with feedback complaints directly to the trustees, the lack of action has made it very unappealing, futile. The only time a change in location to events to help with the noise has been made is when the select board town has asked them to move. The noise goes well beyond the stated property hours of 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. The light from the business is very out of character of any other property in the residential zone. Please have them perform the photometric analysis to determine actual lumen intensity versus planned lumen intensity as requested, particularly during the extended lighted hours. The trustees have continued to use Wood Lane for their equipment access. The last time that was noticed was on June 24th at 1:48 p.m. I can provide more details via pictures if needed. I thought the trustees were not supposed to have equipment access down Wood Lane. The planting buffers are not sufficient to block the business noise customers. They are so inadequate that we allowed our weeds to grow around our fenced property to give our children some privacy in the yard. That is the only thing offering any shielding. The car parking lots are still visible, and the parking lots are certainly active after the stated property hours of 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. The plantings at the new end of Wood Lane are very minimal and do not meet the request or need. See the pictures below from today. That is the end of Wood Lane. Thank you in advance for your consideration and assistance as it is needed. Okay. Jean, can you remind us again what the, and you might have said this earlier, but I was looking at some of the comments, what the bond that we're holding is actually meant to cover.
Hold on one second.
And the reason I ask is because there are certain things that I think it's appropriate to deal with, and they're related to the bond, and there may be others that are, if they're not related to bond, that we don't have much actionable items on. All right, so where are we at here?
So on condition 31,
Okay,
there's a $10,000 bond made out to the town to ensure the construction, erosion control and measures and performance of any other condition contained herein
Okay.
will take place in accordance with the plans and conditions in this decision
All
to
right, so-
ensure the as-built plans will be submitted.
all right, so that's pretty broad, so actually that gives us pretty significant leeway. Sometimes the decisions are strictly about erosion control or the building of a driveway or things like that. So this one's actually pretty broad, so I think it gives us pretty wide discretion on how we want to handle it. John?
Just one observation on my part, and it's really just an observation, is that what I've noticed is when you drive on Andover Street and you look into the field, the cars are very visible in the middle of a big open meadow and field. And I don't know how it is on the other side with Old Village Lane, but on the Andover Street side, that's what I've observed. I think having like a hedge to buffer the cars so you don't see them visually would be very low cost and actually be very appropriate. I don't know why that didn't happen, but that would be the one thing that I've sort of observed and I think we could do reasonably under the special permit,
So, okay. I'm just going through the permit now to see. We'll get back to you guys
No
to
problem.
have plenty of time to comment.
problem.
I actually want to go through some of these permit items to see. All right, so 21, the applicant shall repair and maintain the existing drainage swale identified on exhibit plan dated January 14th, 2020. The project engineer shall provide written notice to the planning department certifying the swale is functioning as designed. What do we have?
We have an engineer certification that the build substantially complies with the plans.
And is functioning as designed?
Yep.
Okay.
And so the swale, if you may recall, it was John Borghese found it through a walk. He's our town engineer. It was associated with the subdivision plan for Old Village Lane, and
Yeah.
it had not been repaired. And so what was
Right.
conditioned was that they repair it. I've included kind of a locus
Yeah.
to try to show you where that swale begins. So the green highlighted parcel is 58 Old Village Lane that submitted comments tonight.
So that's the Sierra's property?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So the swale is actually, if you see the existing barn structure here, you see a faint line running to the
I
corner
don't
of the wooded area.
I don't see your cursor.
See my cursor here? Do you see it or no?
I don't.
It curves towards the tree line from that barn. So there's a wider one that is not a swale.
Yeah, sorry. I didn't bring my glasses.
The swale actually goes here
Oh,
and it
there.
curves into the
Okay.
wooded area. And so what was reconstructed was just this side of the wooded area, all the way down through to the drainage basin that was constructed for the project.
Okay.
And the parcel that submitted comments is going to the right of that. And there was really no work at that end of the parcel associated with drainage. And there was drainage raised during the permitting process that was sheet flowing across the property line between 100 and 114 to a catch basin. You may recall they showed videos of
Right, no, I
like
remember
water
that.
running. And as far, nobody's contacted me saying that condition still exists. As far as we know, that's improved.
Did we deal with your parcel? Did you guys have comments before? No. Okay. And so we'll get into. I'm not. It's hard to say. They have done a lot of work over there, and that's the difference between, your condition of your property before and after. So, seems to be a pretty strong correlation thereof.
And we've lived in that house since 1987, I think.
Okay.
We built the house.
Okay.
So it's, at some point, Penny, we need you to just state your name for the record and.
Yeah,
that's all.
it's just a question of whether or not that's anything that is part of the bond and the bond release that we're talking about tonight. That's why I was just trying to figure out the lay of the land there. Okay. All right, so report about the overflow parking, we got that. And I'm not sure whose idea it was to do these annual kind of reports. I think it came out of the Fields project, but I think it is a really good practice that I'm enjoying starting to see the fruits of, to see these reports. So, I don't know, it might have been you, John, or Peter. I don't know how we kind of fell into
I
that.
think it's more along the lines is that you can't put every contingency into a decision. You should observe and correct if something's not working.
Photometric plan, I mean, I'd be open to comments on that. I'd be inclined to actually still want to see that. I mean, I know you don't use them as much now, as you said, but I don't know if that's going to change in the future, and I'd rather avoid a problem in the future if the lights wind up being too bright, or at least you know, okay, we're not going to use them or something like that. So, at least for me, I'd be inclined not to go away from that condition, but I definitely want to hear comments on that, what the majority wants. It is a condition, so we would have to vote to release them from that condition, I would think. If someone wants to, we can. If not, we'll just leave it in, and because it is actually a condition.
Sorry,
Yeah.
point out which number you're looking for that condition. Is it, there's a specific paragraph
Of the decision.
of the, you were talking about?
So
Yeah.
the decision is paragraph 23 of the decision.
Okay,
Requires a photometric plan analysis to
there we go.
determine actual lumen intensity versus planned lumen intensity. That's the last last sentence in paragraph 23. The applicants have, I think in good faith, made a request for us to waive that, saying that they're not using those lights or very infrequently. So I'm sure there's a cost to that. And so it's a question of whether or not we'd want to, we'd have to affirmatively waive it. Otherwise, it's actually a condition of the special permit. So overflow parking, so that seems like it's been addressed. And then, all right, so do you guys want to make any comments about the specifically some of the abutter comments, really the screening, noise, lighting, I think are the main ones, but really anything you want to talk about would be helpful.
Sure, yeah. I think with the lighting, yeah, as I said, the only time we turn it on is in December. So the fixtures we have are dark sky requirements are like compliant. So yeah, we're happy to do what you guys prefer, but yeah, we really truly don't use them outside of the month of December. With the noise complaint, we do sound test every event that we have, walking around to the different sort of parts of the property to see how loud it is. It's the first thing we say to every band or musician that comes in, that they have to keep volume levels down. We haven't heard a complaint from anyone else apart from Kelly. So and I haven't heard anything from her until tonight. We'll continue to monitor that if we do. But the report that we had done last year with the member of the town, we've definitely not gone above those levels at any point, even down to the type of band that we get in to play or not, techno or like loud rock band or anything like that. We have jazz musicians and instrumentalists that come in, so it's nothing that's too heavy. For the timing, Kelly mentioned that we play outside. We got an entertainment license to play past 6 o'clock until 8 o'clock on Friday and Saturday nights. So that's the only reason that we stay later, is because we have a license to do that. With the plantings, just further to your point, we've planted quite a bit. Jeremy, maybe you want to talk about what we've planted.
Yeah, so John, related to the Andover view.
Come to the microphone.
Introduce yourself.
Related to Jeremy Dick, stewardship manager. Related to Andover Street view, we planted some new trees along the wall at Andover Street, and then some on the Wood Lane wall, parallel to the parking lot, as a first step towards dropping or reducing the view from Andover. Unfortunately, we did some weed control on that Andover Street wall over the last 2 years to bring what used to be a pretty substantial problem down, so you can actually see the wall. And the hayfield is in much better condition today than it was 2 years ago, so that also contributes to what you can see through that view.
I just wonder, again, I'm not a arborist or a landscape architect, but a low hedge right next to where the parking is, to buffer the parking, seems to me to be a simple sort of thing. I mean, the problem is you put it on Andover Street, there's still gonna be gaps in, it's deciduous. But if you put it there, I mean, I was surprised the first time I saw it, how bad a bunch of cars in an open field looks. And it's jarring compared to, and again, I don't mean to be negative to you guys because you do a wonderful job, I think, maintaining, one of the best resources in the town, but it's just a small little thing. So I raise it more as in the spirit of it than anything else, so.
Yeah. No, I think we understand a hedge is actually quite a thing to maintain. And the length of that parking lot would be quite a project, so that's something we need to consider. So,
Yeah.
Okay, so.
Sorry,
go
I
ahead.
just want to add,
Yeah.
to your point, I don't know what's causing the flooding. I'm sorry that's happening. That's awful. That's not nice. We obviously haven't done any work on that side of the property, so it's hard to say if it was us or not. So that's all I can say. It was a very wet winter, as we all know. We had flooding on a lot of our parts of the property and other places as well. So I guess that's all I would say for now for that.
So I would just ask if you, because I don't necessarily think it's part of our bond release, because it was not something that I think was part of this particular construction, but I would ask you to at least look over there to see if there's
Yeah.
anything from your property coming on there,
Sure,
or any
yeah.
of if the drainage is coming that way or affected by your
Absolutely.
topography, or if there's anything that can be done to assist. In terms of the bond release, I think I'd be inclined to think maybe release some, but not all. I don't know what Alyssa or John, we are the only voting members here. I still would like the lighting study. I think they should still look at, screening has made really good progress, but I think there maybe could be a little bit better to kind of finalize it, so I don't know.
My preference would be, I understand what you're trying to do, is to maybe give ourselves a time window as opposed to releasing part of it. Let's revisit it in a month or 2 months, in a fairly short period of time, and then make a decision based on better data.
Near
Can
the
we get
mic-
move closer, sorry?
Just near the microphone.
Oh,
Sorry, John. I know you're getting hit by the sun.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure that out.
Alyssa?
I would tend to agree with John. How long does it really take to do the light study, get that information, and to come back with that? We're not talking about a significant amount of time here.
Do you have a thought on how much time that would take?
I don't know off the top of my head. Sorry.
Gene, any idea how long those are pretty simple studies,
Getting
right?
contractors is just difficult right now, to be honest. Everybody's so busy, so, I would think within 2 months, but I'm speculating.
So could you guys come back in September and give us an update on that? We only have one meeting in August. Maybe come back in September. Did you,
the one concern about the photometric study is that it's the summer, and that would mean having lights on past 8:30 at night. to
okay,
do the study.
if you want to do it a little, if you
So I
wait,
think we'd have to wait anyway.
want to wait till October maybe, or, till a
Yeah.
better time when it's, doing it at 6 o'clock.
More
and
consistent. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then if we could get some additional photos from you, something that might be helpful is photos at, a month apart or 6 months apart. So we're not only getting photos like one time. Like we get the winter photos and then we get the summer photos and they're very different, but something maybe to fill in the gap.
Is this of anything in particular?
I think mostly of the screening,
Okay.
just any kind of specific the screening you've put in, and also maybe the view of that John was talking about from Andover Street of the parking lot and what you can see, not see. I honestly don't drive that particular stretch too often, so I'm more curious to kind of see what you can actually see kind of driving by.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Okay. 149 Main Street, Crespo Development, presentation of potential conceptual development plans.
I'm sorry, did you want to allow the abutter to speak, or no?
We're not releasing anything today. We're not, I don't know that there's anything else that needs to be added today. So,
We put together a package to leave for you.
okay,
All the photos.
you'll just leave that for, Yeah.
With that, we'll be happy to, we made another package for the trustees, we'll give to them.
Okay, great.
Trying to get someone to come up and tell us what's causing it, but that's.
Okay, so
that's
feel-
ongoing.
Okay,
Well, when this comes back on the, just keep track of the agendas. You can sign up online to get all the agendas. And when it comes back in the fall, or reach out to Jean and we can hear from you again.
so if you need to learn how to do that, just call me tomorrow and I'll walk you through, and then you'll get an email every time I post an agenda.
And then you can look and see if this is on there and then come back and talk to us if you'd like.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for coming. Okay, 149 Main Street, Crespo Development. Jean, you want to tee us off?
Sure.
Well-
I don't have a lot to say. At the
Oh.
time of posting the agenda, that we were going to have conceptual plans for the proposed mixed-use development be presented. This is the former Santander Bank lot on Main Street.
It's currently empty.
It's been empty for quite some time. It also entails, there's a house that sits just behind it, somewhat embedded into the parking lot. So it contemplates combining those two parcels into one parcel.
Are they owned by the same entity?
My understanding is there's a purchase and sale executed on both, but I can be corrected if I'm
So they
mistaken.
will be owned by the same
Yes,
entity? Okay.
yes.
All right, so just as a matter of kind of discussion, or just to kind of show how we got here, so this is something that's coming to the board for the first time. Honestly, I saw it for the first time when it was on the agenda. So we often do encourage people making proposals for properties in town that they're going to change or make new uses of, or apply for special permits, to come to the board before applying, so that we can talk it through with them, give some feedback, and that can lead to better projects and better applications coming before us. So I think that's what's happening here. This project is coming before us as a concept. They're not asking for any permissions or permits or any of that kind of thing right now. They're just telling us what they're thinking. And my understanding, they're looking for some feedback from the board, and then we may see them back again, depending on that feedback and what they want to do with kind of a plan or a request for permits or the like. This is in the downtown overlay district, Jean, is that right?
Yes, as well as the underlying general business district.
Okay. And so I'd encourage people to look at, both board members and any members of the public that are interested in this, to look at the downtown overlay district and what its purposes are. And when did that zoning go into effect?
I think 2007.
Okay, so it's been in effect for
Yeah.
about 15 years. And if you look at the purposes, is to encourage mixed-use developments that are appropriate for a downtown that may be better suited downtown than other places in town. Also to try to revitalize, to try to encourage more pedestrian and things like that, traffic in town. Also look at, where would be a good place to look at the downtown master plan and downtown revitalization
Yep.
meetings that have been happening? Is there places where someone could look at that information?
Yep, so on the planning board website and the economic development website, we've recently done a downtown master plan improvement plan, which was a result of the master plan. So the master plan suggested we look at that. We've done that. We hired a consultant that was presented to the select board. Time's flying, I think this past fall. And so it contemplates a lot of streetscape improvements for the most part, and street trees, street lighting, wider sidewalks, things like that. And so at this point, we're pursuing funding because it will be a very expensive endeavor. But we hope visually, it certainly contemplates tremendous amount of improvements to the downtown.
So, and I would think then that a proposal like this, it would be important in your concepts to look at those plans and incorporate ideas. And I think you have to an extent, the whole pocket park idea, or where the parking is, the types of facades, the type of architecture, the type of sidewalks and things like that, so that as we start getting funding, hopefully for these types of projects, that things can kind of blend in together.
And I'll just add, in addition to that, a result of that improvement plan was also to hire a consultant to look at the overlay district itself and downtown zoning in general. And so we are under contract with someone. It will take a full year and potentially next year's town meeting for anything to be adopted, but we are working on just revisiting the downtown, given it was 2007 and it really hasn't been used all that much. And so a consultant firm has been hired. We are also looking at storefront improvement type plans, things like that. Most came out of the master plan as well as this improvement plan, so.
Okay, and so thank you, Jean, that's great. So with that, I'll probably turn it over to the Crespo Development. I will say that this is a discussion item, so what's going to happen is you guys can present your conceptual ideas and we'll take a look at them. Board members will be allowed to ask questions and make comments and things like that. If you want any particular feedback or you have any questions of us, we're happy to take it. I don't anticipate taking public comments on this because it's not a public hearing, or it's not even really a full plan yet. So I'd rather give you guys feedback from our perspective, and then if you do come back with an actual, full-fledged, fully baked out plan, then at that point, depending on what it is, right? It could be something that you're allowed to do by right. You don't have to come back here. It could be something that's by special permit. Then you do come back here. We'll go through the special permit process, and then there would be public comments during the special permit process. So with that, why don't you tell us about what you're thinking and what you'd like us to give you feedback on?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, the members of the board. For the record, John Smolak, attorney for Crespo Development, the proponent. To my left is Jim DeBarrow of JTA, our project architect, and also with us this evening are Richard and Josh Crespo, over my shoulder to the rear of Crespo Development, as well as Frank Holmes of Langen Engineering, our project engineers. And so some of the comments made by Jean and yourself, we plan to cover in some respect, but again, we're here this evening simply to obtain some preliminary feedback, to get some reaction from the board, to see whether we're heading in the right direction with the conceptual redevelopment of the property. And so what I'd like to do this evening is first go through some existing condition slides so that you have a better understanding of the neighborhood. I know all of you have driven by this site millions of times, but we've taken additional slides to show you different angles that you may not typically focus on as you're going by the property. But in terms of the status right now, again, we're in the exploration stages, trying to identify some concepts, and we've identified a concept which is just designed to be thrown out there to get some initial reaction, and then take that feedback and move forward with some other iteration of what we've proposed so far. And so, as Jean had indicated, we do have two parcels that are under agreement. 149 Main, which is, as you know, the vacant Santander Bank, used to be years ago was the Arlington Trust Bank, built back in 1968. Behind that building is 15 2nd Street, which is a smaller single-family house that was probably built around 1900 or so. And so, the idea is to combine both parcels for the reasons being that as we get into the discussion a little further, you'll see it'll be almost impossible to redevelop the site without including that small house to the rear of the property. And so, and I know that, this site hasn't been touched, probably for close to 50 years, 55 years or so. And so it's an opportunity for us, and working with the board, to try to develop this as sort of the gateway into the main downtown area. A lot of work has been done in East and West Mill, and to redevelop that site, and because of that, I believe the redevelopment of the downtown area was sparked by that along Water Street, and hopefully it'll carry forward to the downtown area. And I know that as you know, over the past couple of years, over the past maybe 10 years or so, there have been some major redevelopments on the site, and I think the problem is that the downtown area really suffers from sort of an architectural identity, and so hopefully with the Innis study that's underway, that'll help to tweak the zoning in a way that'll provide some additional traction to the downtown area to get some additional foot traffic to the area, and so. Again, I think what we want to do is walk you through the site, and and walk you through different angles to sort of identify some of the features here. And as Gene had indicated, the site is entirely within the general business zoning district and the downtown overlay district. And in fact, several of the residential properties abutting the property are also into the downtown overlay district as you get closer towards the St. Michael's School property. But if we could, Gene, if you could just move a couple of slides forward. So the existing conditions, this is just an overlay, an aerial overlaying the existing improvements. So as you see, Main Street's on your left of the slide, Second Street is at the bottom of your slide, and the existing bank is approximately 3,400 square feet in size with a drive-up window. And as you see the 15 Second Street to the rear, as you see that, tried redeveloping the site without including that site as part of a redevelopment concept. So just further elaboration, to the top of the slide are existing residential dwellings, and that's the boundary between the general business and the R4 district, and beyond which is the Sullivan Insurance Building, and beyond which are multifamily condos that are stacked. You can't see it on this slide, but are stacked back to back that extend off of Main Street to the rear of the site. And then to the right hand of the slide is again an R4 zoning district where there's an existing residential building, which you'll see shortly. And across Second Street, you'll see is it's called the Fry's Courthouse Complex, and further up Second Street, you'll see multifamily dwellings, all within the general business district. So moving to this, again, this is the aerial of the site, just to give you a sort of a bird's eye view, a real bird's eye view of the area. You see the site enters at the intersection of Water and Main, and corners on Second Street. If we move to the next slide, and this is, as you've seen this many times, a view down Main Street. As you see on the left-hand side, you see the Foster Sullivan Insurance Building, which was redeveloped within the downtown overlay district, and then the residential dwelling on the left-hand side as you approach the site. And if we can go to the next slide, I'll just go through these 7 slides fairly quickly just to give you an indication. This is a view, obviously, straight off from Main Street. As you see on the left-hand side are the 2 residential dwellings stacked back-to-back, then the Foster Sullivan Insurance Building to the left. And then if we go to the next slide, is a view from the opposite direction at the corner of Second and Main, and you see in the far right-hand side is the 15 Second Street building, which is part of the proposed redevelopment site. And moving to the next slide, you have you're looking from Main Street down Second Street, and as you see on the right-hand side, there are 3 buildings in a row. The first of which is the commercial building called Fry's Courthouse, it used to be called that. And then beyond that are 2 multifamily buildings, again, all within the general business zoning district. And then the next slide is a view looking from Second Street directly into the second entrance into the site. And so you can't see it here, but that fence is the dividing line between the R4 and the general business district. And the house obviously is surrounded by existing fence. And then, so the next slide shows just a slightly different angle of that same entrance, and you see the residential dwelling to the rear of the site, which is R4. And so, moving to the next slide, we're just back to the aerial, again, where we started. And then, in terms of existing constraints, as you can see in this depiction, this is just an overlay of the general business zoning district and related setbacks if you were to redevelop the site. And currently, as you see, the existing buildings that are there today couldn't be built because of setback requirements. Under the general business zoning district, 45 feet is allowed by right. Under the downtown overlay district, 3 stories or 45 feet is allowed by special permit. And if we could move to the next slide, please, Gene, which is the downtown overlay district. And again, the purpose of the downtown overlay district, at least one of the purposes, is to bring the development closer to the front street line. And so that's the attempt in this particular slide. We still need to confirm rear setbacks and side setbacks with the building inspector. I believe that there's a 0 rear yard setback but we have 2 front yard setbacks, maximum of 10 feet. And so, moving beyond that,
That's a point to note, it's a maximum of 10 feet.
a maximum
For the
10
front
feet
setback.
foot setback, correct. So, again, moving to, this is the potential layout per special permit if we were to proceed through the downtown overlay district. And just again, this is an example of, and I'll turn the discussion over to Jim shortly, but this is an example of where the downtown overlay district's purpose is to really slide the building toward the front setbacks along the street line. And with respect to this building, what we're trying to do is respect the existing residential that's in the R4 zoning district by providing a wider setback, both at the top of the slide, as you see, and to the rear of the property. And as was mentioned also, we have we have looked at the older VHB design guidelines from 2007 that were developed, and also reviewed the Beta Group master plan for the street improvements, and also some of us have participated in the Innis Associates review process as well, an interview process. And so, I mean, a lot of the recurring themes are street connectivity, better signage, better uniformity in terms of architectural style in the downtown area. And I know that we've been wrestling with this for years to try to see how to attract more development in the downtown area, and it really is, a function of getting more foot traffic down there. I know folks, frequently complain, why are there so many nail salons? Why are there so many pizza shops in the downtown area? And it's just simply because that's what we're only able to attract today. And without greater foot traffic, and I think you see this with East and West Mill, you're with greater foot traffic, you're going to attract a much more quality tenant, and that's with a mix of either commercial and or residential use. So with that said, I'll turn the discussion over to Jim DeBarro.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Jim DeBarro. I'm a project architect at Joe the Architect in Somerville, although I am a Merrimack Valley local as well. I live only a couple miles north. And I'd like to dive into some of the more schematics of the ground floor plane and talk a little about what we have currently as drawn for the site. So John, thank you for going over the existing constraints of the site so far. So we were working with the floor plan that we have based off the constraints. And what we're planning on doing is having parking towards the rear as well as parking underneath the building as well. Within this footprint, we're looking at 2 commercial spaces, one around 3,700 square feet, the other around 4,100 square feet, as well as, filling out the rest of the space with all the things that a building might need, such as, a fire control room, loading dock, trash area, things that might be attractive to potential tenants, such as a bike storage room, which is it's a big, to not have your bike stolen, basically. If we go to the next slide, we will focus on the pocket parks, as we did review the VHB as well as the Beta Group's guidelines on what to do for this area. So we were looking at potentially adding a pocket park. These 3 options were drawn by Frank Holmes' group, Langen Engineering, and we have focused on the option C as the renderings show, which show basically it'll have its tree boxes at the outboard side of the sidewalk, so that way it protects local pedestrians coming in and out of the potential commercial space, as well as walking down the street. You have that barrier buffer of street trees between the sidewalk and where cars would be parked. We also wanted to, in the rendering, show what the VHB study is trying to promote, which is better sidewalks, more necking down of the roads, so that way it creates a more, the traffic in these areas can have a more a calmer traffic flow in these areas. And if we move on to the next slide.
Just before we move on to the next slide, what I also wanted to mention is that what we're trying to do is open up the corner of 2nd and Main Street with the hope of trying to create some sort of outdoor dining for a restaurant. and consistent with what First and Main has done in terms of trying to create more connectivity and signage and so on. I think that's what we're trying to mimic in terms of conceptually a design that does provide and attract more pedestrian-friendly visitors to the site. I mean, it would be great to get something like a Cafe Azteca out in this area to go here and locate here to, again, attract people to this area. So, I'm sorry.
Correct. No worries. I appreciate that. Moving on to the next slide here. We did have a conceptual diagram of how we would potentially lay out the upper floor units of, so the ground floor plane would be all commercial, although the second, third, and fourth floors would be residential. And how we were envisioning laying it out is the shape of the building is this kind of rhombus trapezoid type shape, where we can start to get a double loaded corridor with each of these units having an outdoor amenity space potentially. And as it's drawn here in this diagram, it's going to have that barbell of a central corridor with the circulation vertical on each end. How we were envisioning it so far is 2 1-bedrooms, 8 2-bedrooms, and 1 3-bedroom per floor, potentially up to 33 units for 3 floors, 11 units per floor. If we go to the next slide.
Is that a total of 4 floors?
It's a total of 4 floors, but 3 of them are only residential. Correct.
All right, we'll come back to that.
Yep. So we did want to do a deep dive on what's existing in the downtown, and as you know, as we all know about what's existing in the downtown and the current quilt as it stands. There's a lot going on, right? There's a lot of various styles in various typical New England styles, as well as typical Mill City styles. And we did want to take bits and pieces of these to kind of start paying homage to some of these pieces, such as, on Water Street, some of the brick that you'd see in a typical mill, or, on 163 Main, where you see that typical clapboard siding, that we were trying to emulate as well in those middle bands of the residential piece. Also, something to note, we wanted to, in some of the newer developments downtown for 73 Main and across the street at 70 Main, the windows that have the black trim is an attractive option to implement in this design as well. If we keep on going down here. So with this massing concept, this looks on screen here a little too wireframey, but we did want to show a 3-floor option at the same height at 45 feet. If we go to the next slide, we show a 4-floor option at 45 feet with the same height, essentially. The only thing changes is the floor-to-floor, where we would be proposing, actually, for the commercial space down below would be 14 feet, with each residential floor being 10 feet. So in actual total, it'd be 43 feet, I believe, or 44 feet instead of 45. If we go to the next slide, we want to start add some color and texture to this space, and also something that's important to us, and we do know pushing the upper limit on height as well as what's allowed for stories, right? We want to tailor the roof line to reflect this and start to basically allow there to be living space in that upper region while not having it be a typical eyesore, right? By using a mansard rooftop. And how we can start to detail that more specifically to cater to that need in the town. If we go down to the next slide, is some of the more photorealistic renderings, which start to show those at the ground plane, that horizontal band of brick that you typically see, potentially some garage door type aesthetic ways to get into the commercial space, so that way on street flow, walking wise, or even dining, say you're out there enjoying a burger and a beer, right? You have an easy flow from the street face, and how that starts to filter into this site here. The middle bands of the residential to have a typical kind of clapboard New England siding. The top would be a shingle style, in having the sides of the dormers also have that shingle that you could see that detail often in like the South End in Boston, where there's the shingles come up the side of those dormers, and how that starts to bring the massing downward, as we're envisioning. The last 2 slides are different views as we would imagine this to be, and you can start to see the necking of the road, how the street parking gets almost hidden by how the sidewalk starts to get manipulated here. as well as in this view here, if you look to the left, the street trees, providing that buffer along the street face, so that way you can walk comfortably between the cars passing you on Main Street, as well as walking down into the Main Street. If we go to the last slide here. And we understand it's always hard being the first penguin off the iceberg with a project like this, especially at what we would call a gateway to the downtown, right? So we are looking for feedback. We're looking for a clear opinion in what everyone's thinking about how it's currently as drawn.
And some, if I just may add, again, we're looking for feedback on style, color, height, massing, things of that nature, to the extent that you feel comfortable providing some feedback. But again, it's this is just a preliminary rendering. Once things start to get developed, we'd have greater pedestrian improvements, connections, street furniture, landscaping, things of that nature, and so again, this is just the start. And one of the items is the question of height. If you if you go with the general business district, 45 feet is allowed by right, regardless of the number of stories. But downtown overlay is three stories or 45 feet. So if we were to work under the downtown overlay district, which provides more generous setbacks, then we'd have to go for a variance for a fourth story, and if we were to go to that route, if we were going 4 stories. So I guess it really doesn't matter much as to the number of stories. It's the height that matters. And, whether you could fit 4 stories within 45 feet, or you could fit 3 stories in 45 feet, depending on what type of look you're trying to pin down.
Okay. Oh, thank you again. Thank you for the presentation. Again, it's not the easiest way to pitch a project in a public, meeting and presenting to us for the first time and getting potentially positive criticism, positive feedback, negative feedback. So, but we appreciate it. At least I know I'd say we can appreciate it, and I think it's I find it a really good way to kind of start something. So why don't I take board member comments, questions. I have a bunch, but I'll defer to my colleagues first and then clean up. So why don't I start with Kelly, you're remote, and we'll get your comments first, and then we'll come down the line here.
Overall, it's great to see additional housing units. We certainly kind of need that, and the idea of the outdoor dining and just the energy that this could bring to downtown. So it's great to see. Thank you for sharing it with us. One of the things that I'm trying to understand is the look of it, and I think it's just maybe one of the things we get along the process is how it would look within the neighborhood with whether it's the 4 stories or 45 feet. I know you gave pictures of the various houses, but just trying to look at that. So maybe I'll have to do a couple extra drive-bys to kind of imagine some of that. I think it's going to be interesting as we go along to understand the massing and the height and how that does fit with some of the style and color of the area. Just in general, is there sort of a timing that you're thinking about for this yet?
Well, it's hard to say. It depends on where we start from, but we'd like to file as soon as we can, depending on the feedback that we get, and we still want to continue to work with the board to sort of advance this design, and it really depends on the input of all the members of the board to see whether we're in the right direction or whether we need to go back to the drawing board. We're here to gauge reactions, and I'm not sure you're getting an answer, but
I understand what you're saying. Though I understand. I appreciate the words. So understood. In terms of, are they all rentals versus condos?
I don't believe. I would have to defer to my client, the Crespo Group, to how that would get ironed out.
Yeah, I'm not sure there's a decision's been made yet.
Okay, to be determined.
Yeah.
Okay. And then would some of these be, and maybe that might lead to this question that could be connected. Do you know what you would do in terms of affordable housing?
So it would, as long as it's 8 to, again, John, I'm sure you know that as long as it's 8 or more units, it would fall under our new inclusionary zoning. So obviously, if it was 33 units, then you're looking at, 5 or 6 that either are either affordable or you're looking for a fee in lieu. I'd really rather, especially for our first project under the inclusionary, to have it be actual units, but obviously that to be discussed. If you're looking at, 18 to 18, then you're looking at 3 to 4. It would qualify. Just something to be aware of.
Right, and we're aware of the bylaw and the next steps that would be required as far as the bylaw. You have to go through a typical lottery process for the affordable units, an affirmative fair housing marketing plan, and impose a restriction on the affordability, whether it's ownership or rental, and so on. So that would be a process that you'd work through with the State Department of Housing and Community Development in order to
just also
get this.
remember to look when after you kind of go back and after our feedback and are looking at the numbers, there are some density bonuses allowed by the inclusionary that may help in this situation. Frankly, this is an awesome place for affordable housing because of the walkability. One of the things, if you're struggling with housing costs, you may also be struggling with other costs such as cars and getting places. And on Main Street downtown, where you can walk to a lot of places, that's an even greater benefit to someone who might be struggling. So I think it's a really good location for it. And to the extent, again, some of the things we have to consider, although it's not for our board to decide the economics, the reality of economics is when you're doing downtown projects that are mixed use, you want to put a cool commercial retail or restaurant on the bottom. You have to be able to support that with residential. That's, Gina and I were talking about this earlier. That's with the down the street where the Golden Seal and the commercial there. They also built residential to be able to kind of afford that mix of units. So the realities are that it's necessary for the economics to make it work, but also it's a great model for how to kind of build kind of our downtown in a smart growth manner. So we'll go to Alyssa.
I'll echo some of the comments made. I like the idea of the additional commercial space, some residential uses down in there, making good use of the downtown area. One of the things I just want to think about is the parking. I noticed, 33 units and 30, I just lost my spot here, 36 spots and 30.
It's not enough parking.
Yeah, especially if I'm thinking if a restaurant were to go into there, where are people going to park? One of the things that, I noticed, like the bike room, which is cool in theory. I don't know just
how useful it could be.
How useful it could be in this area. I could see it sometime, where people commute by bike to work and in that type of area. So maybe that could be a space for more parking. Just an idea to throw out there. But overall, I'd be interested to see where you go with this. I think it could be a good thing in the downtown area.
With the parking, you'll have to figure out the number of units, but it's not enough parking. You really need to use the ratios to make sure that there's enough spots for everyone who's living there not to have to park on the street. I think that's going to be essential. Then if you have a restaurant or something like that, depending on the hours, is it a breakfast and lunch place versus a dinner place? You may have competing time, or you may have non-competing times, so there's not as much of a concern. If it's a dinner place and everybody's going to be home at the same time, well, then maybe you talk to St. Michael's about renting designated spaces there for people to park and walk 2 minutes, and that way you're not bumping up against something like that. Something like that where you have a good plan plus the requisite number of parking. We have some flexibility under the bylaw for parking, but I would imagine us not being very relaxed in this situation in terms of the parking. Other things I think we can have a lot more flexibility on, but I'd want to be really, that was one of the three things that kind of stood out as potential issues to deal with. Parking was, for me, on the top of the list of what needs to be really well figured out in advance.
No, good points. I mean, yeah, parking is going to guide what we're able to do here. I mean, there are some things that we can do. I mean, in addition to what's allowed under the parking bylaw by special permit, there are provisions in the downtown overlay district, as you know, that allow you to take a look at a 200-foot radius from the building and allow the counting, at least, of the parking along those public streets. In addition, there's a provision that allows for, parking with areas within 600 feet to be counted as additional parking. And we understand. I mean, parking is a challenge, and to be able to get the right mix between the commercial and the residential.
What I would say, John, is just there are times when I think it's useful for all of us to be imaginative with how we do our counting to make it fit. I would say in this situation, I really want to know that the parking is going to work. Even if you can fit it using other spaces on the bylaw, that's not necessarily going to be a sign off from us that, okay, just because you have the requisite numbers, it's really got to work. Because that to me is the biggest issue. We want to have more people downtown, right? I mean, the idea is if we have more people and to extend more traffic, to extend more, I'm not say difficulties, but there are more cars down there, that's a good thing. Yeah. As long as it doesn't go too far, and we have a good plan for it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a challenge. I mean, that's you hit it right on the head.
And it's not insurmountable. I mean, this is...
And we're not adverse to getting creative with the parking, like you said, Alyssa, with the the bike room potentially being eliminated, or even using some of the space in that second commercial space that's kind of in the middle section as potentially tandem parking for if we're going to be having. I know it still depends on what use. It's still up in the air what use or occupancy would be in these commercial spaces, and that's also parking dependent. But if we're to have a potential valet for a restaurant, that's where you could utilize that tandem parking, basically doubling the parking underneath the building as a possible.
Right, and I also thinking about possible tenants with limited parking, the restrictions you'd have of tenants that would be able to come into there.
Correct.
Okay.
We're open to all options.
No, I think it's a great concept, and I think it's a really nice anchor point for downtown. I think it's certainly within the spirit of the overlay district, and I think it could be a really interesting project. I think just a couple points. At least reading the overlay district, I know it explicitly spells out kind of a 3-story or 45, and I think like we go to 4 stories, it might be a little much for that area, but that's just kind of my feedback. And I actually have a question. I don't know if you guys have thought about this ahead, but are you guys planning to maintain the existing curb cut at the current house that's there, or restore the curb?
The curb cut that we are planning on utilizing is the one if you're looking at the house on 2nd Street, the one to the right. In the existing curb cut, if you're going up the street, due east towards the insurance building, that curb cut on your right. The details there on how traffic flow and how a car or a person would traverse this site still up in the air. Although we do have Frank Langan and his team on reserve for that need as it arises. That curb cut you're talking about, that's on for the street side. I believe we'd have to look at that. We have to take another look at that.
Yeah, it'll be hard to justify 3 curb cuts for this site. Yeah. I mean, realistically, for circulation purposes. And
Got it. And I think just to echo Kelly's and Eitan's point, I think having the ability of, adding, some of the new affordability units and being able to, look at that, I think would be a pretty big value add, because this is a unique space with a lot of walkability, and I think it'd be a big value add to have those affordable units.
All right, so I love the concept. I think this is exactly the type of concept that we want in our downtown, with a commercial retail on the first floor, residential above, good mix of uses that complement each other, that complement what we have already downtown. So I think it hits exactly what the downtown overlay district calls for. We have the parks, we have the connectivity. It really, the idea hits all of the things that I think we want. It's not a large project by any means. So I think in that regards, I think it's a great idea, and I look forward to seeing how it can come to fruition. I I have concerns about parking. We talked about that. I think it has to be 3 stories at a most 40. The way I read the bylaw is it can't be more than 3 stories and it can't be more than 45 feet. That's the way I read it. We could potentially have a discussion about that or seek counsel on that, but I read it as it says you can get a special permit if it's not more than 3 stories or if it's not more than 45 feet. So I don't think you could do 4 stories and 45 feet without maybe getting a variance. And I think 3 stories at the 45 foot is the right thing to be looking at. That, from my perspective, that's what I would like to see is a commercial first floor, 2 floors above that. If you want to get up to the 45, I don't love the design, which is weird coming from me because usually I don't really care about the designs. I care more about what's actually the number of units and usually when it comes to design, I let everyone else do it and I don't really care. I think it's too modern. I think it does have some similarities to the buildings across the street, but I don't know. Maybe I'm stealing your thunder, John, because I was pretty sure this is what you were going to say.
Surprised when I say though.
That's I'm curious because
John's been awfully quiet.
Right. I think more kind of pitched roof, gables, more of a. And I'm usually the guy who wants the modern stuff. I'd like it to have more of an older feel to it. Be all cool and modern on the inside with all kind of your amenities, but more in lines of the bottom 2 in the middle as opposed to the top 2 is kind of how more so basically those and listen, I'm just one person. I mean, I'm not an architect. I'm a terrible artist. The only thing I can draw is like a stick figure elephant. So, but I see it more as in line with something more in line with those bottom 2 with something on the with the retail on the bottom. So that was just kind of my thoughts, but I mean, I'm open to seeing whatever you guys produce, and I love the concept, and I think it would be a really good first step for the downtown. It is hard to be the first one to kind of change, though we've had, I mean, the one across the street was kind of different, and some of these, where the eyeglass store, those were different too when they came about, and I think there's a real big consensus that they've been successful and that they really highlight the downtown, but they haven't been driving factors for getting enough people. Now, we're going to have some of these other apartments coming online, and I'm just hoping that the people from the Mills can be drawn over to Main Street, and the people from Main Street can be drawn over to the Mills. But I think we need those people in both with smart designed projects.
Yeah, we definitely hear you, and I would like to just reiterate that we don't want to create a structure on site that is just from the massing we're allowed to straight up as a box. We want to give it character. We want to make sure it starts to do its best to. You're also setting pace too. This is like I said, the first project to be doing something like this downtown, but also do its best job to fit in its surroundings as well. So we can definitely take another look at how we want to tailor that roof line, and like you said, with more gables and more traditional style than a more as drawn. It's a more modern mansard style that you need, more European style. But certainly, we'll take that into consideration.
Just one person's feedback.
For
John.
sure.
First of all, I'd like to compliment you on the presentation. I thought that, particularly in the architectural discussion, the way you led incrementally into it, I really liked that. That was actually one of the best ones I've seen in all my long years in the planning board. So thank you. I thought you put a lot of thought and care into it. So good job. I think to follow up a little bit on some of the things that Etan's saying is, how do you put this in context of the overall downtown? I think part of the challenge is that most of the downtown, first of all, is built over many years. So you have some buildings that are 5-10 years old. You have some that are, First and Main's probably 25-30 years old. And then you have older buildings, and you have very diverse architectural styles. And you also have a predominance of wood structures compared to brick. And if you look at most thriving downtowns, just off the top of my head, very few of them are composed of wood stick structures. I don't think it scales. And so I think what you're doing is you're introducing a new architectural concept here that I think is important, and sometimes it's a little bit jarring, but I think as other properties get redeveloped, potentially some of the older buildings, that we'll probably go with something a little bit similar to what you're proposing. Granted that when the Brad Street redevelopment was done, that was done in the traditional style, but that was, I think, a one-of unique sort of thing. But I do think that what we're going to see is a little bit more some modern elements, and I don't think you're ever going to completely be able to get away from that, as much as I like the traditional stuff. I see what you're doing. Like, I happen to be a huge fan of the garage doors for the lower floors. I like that. I think you can do something that's a little bit have some traditional elements to it, but also some contemporary elements to it. I don't think, in this case, you should, this is just my opinion, bend over completely backwards to do something that's traditional. I think something that has traditional elements and contemporary elements, I think, is the right way, because I think that's going to contribute to a better long-term downtown. So that's my opinion in terms of design.
And I think that's a great, let's think of this as a transition period for the downtown. So it is jarring to see something completely modern, and if there's a way to kind of do what John says and instead of taking something old and putting modern elements, kind of doing the opposite, put something modern with some small older style elements to make it feel more transition.
This reminds me of a lot of places that I've seen in Denver, they have, in most new places, but they took some old buildings and did those things too, and it actually has that blend of old and new. So I think you can do that a little bit.
Closer so I can hear.
Yeah. Getting back to just the height thing for one quick second, I think that, the 45 or 3 stories, I think we have to put our stake in the ground of 45's taller than most everything downtown now, but if that is our direction, that's what we're going to end up with over time. It is, and it is taller than most of the buildings, but something, 45 feet, maybe a few feet less is pretty much, I think, what you're going to, in the long term, have. I just don't see it any other way.
And we also do on this slide here have some, right underneath the addresses, we have the heights associated with each. Might be hard to see, it's an eye test a little bit here, but Langen graciously got out there and took some measurements from the street.
Oh, you do have the heights there.
Just to get a feel of what's existing on the downtown. And as the design sits for floor-to-floor heights, those can be adjusted to suit, although, right now they're at typical / comfortable heights for a typical commercial space in a typical residential build.
So in the general business district, you can go to 45 feet by right, but you're going to have a narrow building. And but with the downtown overlay district, I don't disagree with what you said about the interpretation of the zoning, 3 stories or 45 feet. You would need a variance for an additional story. So, but and under the downtown overlay district, it's the board has the special permit authority to go above. It's not guaranteed. You can go above the height of the existing building, but anything above that existing building requires a special permit, with the upper limit being 3 stories of 45 feet, as I read it anyway. So it's a challenge. You're right about the parking. That's a challenge on the site, and we'd love to do a density bonus, but a density bonus means more parking. So that's the rub that we have, to the challenge that we have in trying to.
Just a comment on parking is, parking is a problem everywhere, but part of the problem with parking is everybody wants a space right in front of the building. So we got to put this stuff in context. Is if we had a parking problem in downtown North Andover, that's probably a good thing. So it's a little bit, I think our rules are pretty flexible, and so maybe you're going to have to walk a little bit of a distance, and I don't think that's the worst thing in the world. So I'm a little less worried about parking.
I agree, but
Yeah.
especially more for, my main concern is, if you're going to a restaurant here, you can walk. If you live there and you bought there, you can probably walk a little bit too. But for the people that are already living downtown, I feel like we should see what we can do to help and keep their parking situation.
Yeah,
the
that's
same.
fair. I mean, but there's certain things you can do of like, no overnight or
No, I think
permits or, something like that.
It's just funny because usually I'm usually the person who's like, yeah, you can walk. Like, I remember living in Boston, and if I got a parking spot 6 blocks away, I'd be like, yeah, 6 blocks away. So I generally agree, but I think this is a good opportunity, like you said, to be the first one, but really do it right, and then set the example for what comes next.
Yeah.
So if we can really have a really great project, I think this is on the way. I think you coming to us beforehand and not just saying, here's our plan, take it or leave it, is a really great step. And I think if we can create a really good project here, that could have a trickle-down effect down the rest of Main Street, which would, I think, be a good thing for the town. But where it's the first one, really want to make sure we do it as right as we can with the parking. And the design.
Well, and I want to add in there, too, the thing I'm thinking about too with the parking is, okay, yeah, there's street further. I worry about the other businesses and them not having places for their customers to park because of one development and the hardship that it could put on our other small businesses on Main Street. So that's a consideration I'm thinking about too, is we're thinking about parking for here.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, we want to be mindful of that fact as well, because the folks right behind me have a parking area, but it's used as a municipal parking lot, and it shouldn't be. So, so we want to be respectful of that as well.
Are there any environmental concerns? I mean, it's been a bank, and then before that a bank, so I assume not. But any 21E issues? Has there ever been a laundromat or anything like that we know of?
We'll go through the traditional due diligence and
Okay.
phase 1, phase 2 if necessary, just to double check.
Peanut, are you aware of what other businesses have been there? Anything other than a bank in the recent history?
I don't go beyond all.
Okay.
I checked in
All right.
with
I
historical
remember it well,
society. It was nothing on record past
Okay.
the bank. So
Perfect.
Yeah.
But as part of our normal due diligence, we're obviously mindful of that. So if there's something there, we'll find it. We hope you don't find it.
we understand that right now there's a lot of items in flux with zoning and how that's handled. I know Innis Group is doing their work right now and kind of in the background. But we're willing to work closely with everyone here to make this be a successful project for everyone. So.
Okay. Well, I think it's a great first start.
Thanks.
Great first start.
No, I appreciate we appreciate the feedback in terms of design. I guess we're getting a little bit difference in which
Yeah,
is
so
what
that-
we expect.
Right. So
And,
so
it's sort of
what?
like
yep.
when you know it and you see it, but you guys haven't seen the architecture.
So I would say, listen, take our advice for what it is, and that it's advice. We like the concept. There are things that need to get down, but don't try. What I would say is, don't try to design something a piece that I might like and a piece that John, because then you're just going to get something that's terrible. Design the project that you think works best and that you think you like the best, and then come back and convince us if necessary. But we like the idea, we like the concept, and the architecture we'll figure out.
I just wanted to add, because when you said, bringing in the mills with the downtown area, that's almost how I saw this. You have the brick of the mills, which is a little bit more, to me, it's a more modern, on the weekends, it's a happening place, restaurants are busy, that it was almost bringing in the old school of downtown with the mills as an intersecting.
So it might have just been the lack,
Design.
maybe it's just the squareness of it without the gables. I think that might be just the piece that, or some sort of, homage there that I was missing. But like I said, I'm not the big architecture person, so.
Yeah, I mean, there is like effectively two districts that can nearly converge at that point. And just to echo John's point, I love the garage door thing. And I think it promotes people to seeing people dining entertaining outside and bring people to the property, right? So I think that's a really nice feature.
A really good one of that is A&B Burgers in Beverly,
Mhm.
which also has
Yep.
above it. So that would be a good model for those garage doors. They did it really well, and the lighting works really well there.
Yeah, and I guess the only other comment is to the extent that you see something out there that you think would work here, we're open to ideas sooner as opposed to later, so that we could help, try to advance the design, and, eventually what we'll do is we'll come in with, various view sheds to show, street furniture here, this is what we'd like to do there, and try to, put it together that way. But, also, I'm not paying the freight on the interest, so I know that these developers want to move forward. And so we'll certainly want to work with you and try to advance the design and try to get something in there that fits in.
So the only other thing I would say is that obviously this is just a discussion item. At some point, if it comes forward or it comes back to us, it may come back as a special permit. At that point, we'd have public hearings and things like that. We'd take public comment. That doesn't preclude you from talking to neighbors now in the interim, from talking to abutters, and I would highly recommend that because successful projects that I've seen, it's sometimes just sometimes there are things that can't be overcome. But sometimes there's just small things that can be made, and doing it early as part of the design makes it a lot easier for everybody. So sometimes it's as simple as a fence, or as simple as screening in certain places, or driveway access. And if you work it into your design now, you solve 3 or 4 problems that could come later on.
Yep.
So you have no obligation to talk to anybody. You can just put up some designs and submit permit applications. But I would say that the projects that have the most success are the ones that do talk to people and see what you can do to work in things that help the people that currently live there, because you're going to be their new neighbors. So,
Yeah, no, I agree.
Kind of just,
yep.
and just one more comment, just one more positive thing on the design that I thought will help bring a lot of energy to the areas. Even the balconies, the outdoor space that you have for all the units, I just thought that was a great aspect of the design.
Great.
Thanks.
Now I'm
I think
sold.
it's building code now.
If you could provide us some parking spaces, we'll gladly provide charging stations.
All right.
So,
Thank you very much.
all right, thanks for your time.
Thank you
I
very much.
For your
appreciate it.
time. Appreciate it.
Okay. Right. Election of officers. All right, that's a fun one.
Who drew the short straw?
Who do you think?
Peter's not here.
What's that?
Peter's not here.
Oh, so we definitely vote him chair. All right, does anyone have any particular desire to hold or nominate anyone for any particular officer? We don't have any secretaries or treasurers. We just have a president and a vice president, or chair and a vice chair. The vice chair's duty is to be the chair if the chair is not here.
Is that John now? Are you currently the vice chair?
I am the chair of vice, yes.
Okay.
The chair of vice. Yes. John runs the vice department.
So, yes.
Yes. Kelly, Alyssa,
So
John.
my inclination is to keep things as they are.
Okay.
It's the same. I would
Kelly.
think. I would think sticking with how we are now would be the way to move forward.
Okay. So can we get a motion then from either Kelly or Alyssa?
I move to maintain Eitan Goldberg as chair and John Simons as vice chair.
Can we get a second?
Second.
All in favor. Kelly,
Aye.
Alyssa,
Yes.
John.
Yes.
I'm going to abstain. All right. That's approved. 3-0. All right. Meeting minutes. Can I get a motion to approve the meeting minutes for June 21st, 2022?
So moved.
Motion made. Can I get a second?
A second.
All in favor. Kelly,
Yes.
Alyssa,
Yes.
John.
Yes.
I vote yes. We do not have a meeting August 2nd, correct?
We do not. National Night Out.
August 2nd is National Night Out. For anyone who doesn't know, that is a national program here in town. It's basically run by the police department. It's a great night to get out and meet your local officers, police, fire, EMS. Kids can go in the cruisers, and they often have trainings of the police dogs, and different local companies come in, and it's a really great event. So I recommend everyone attend, especially with younger children. Love it. My kids have loved it whenever we've been able to go. So then our next meeting is
August 9th.
August 9th.
We'll have 2 new public hearings opening on that day.
Fantastic. What are they?
Merrimack College would like to do an athletics storage shed, so I think 3,200 square foot near their hockey rink area.
Okay.
And RCG at the Mills, they own the parcels across the street from East Mills, so the corner mansion that's referred to, the corner Elm and Water, and then there's 8 townhouses to the rear of that, and it's primarily site improvements for access, egress, stormwater improvements. So.
Okay. Those don't sound like we'll need any torches and pitchforks, so that sounds good. Okay. All right. Can we get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion made. Can we get a second?
Second.
All in favor? Kelly?
Yes.
Alyssa?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
I vote yes. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.